What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA show powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/All-NBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Marc Stein, who is here. Tim Legler will be joining us later in the show, but Marc Stein is here because, my goodness, there are a lot of NBA trade rumblings going on during the finals. It feels earlier than ever, so we had to bring in the man who knows all the secrets, Marc Stein. Mark, how you doing?
Adam Mares. Friday the 13th, Game 4.
Right.
I cannot believe you're straying from the finals. What's gotten into you?
I know, man. I know. Typically, I would like to be all finals all the time, but the NBA never lets us rest. You know this. They are always bringing up.
Correct. They never let me rest, and I'm old.
This is the time of year, man, where things are coming in morning, night, middle of the day. You never know. There's always something going on. So I wanted to have you on to talk about a lot of this stuff that's going on, a lot of these rumors and reports. And I want to start with just this. Is it just me forgetting what happens every single year? Or does it feel like there is more going on in terms of big picture stuff, not superstar players, role players, rumors, coaches, general managers? Does it feel a little bit like we're shaping up for an extremely eventful trade season here in the NBA?
You know, there have been so many people saying that it's going to be wild, it's going to be a circus, and that just makes me a little nervous to promise that.
Right.
Because people do not like that promise being broken. When they are promised a lot of trade activity and don't get it, that makes the viewers of shows like ours very, very unhappy. So I'm a little bit more reluctant to just flat out guarantee it. Because look, February was the flat out craziest trade deadline of my 30 plus years covering the league. So, but look, it is very busy. We only have one coaching vacancy, but it's the Knicks. So that brings its own extra level of noise. And look, we have not had Giannis Antetokounmpo has not asked to be moved like so many teams out there were hoping. It's been pretty, I don't want to say quiet, but just there has not been the activity on the Giannis front that was anticipated. But on the flip side, the Kevin Durant talk is front and center. Kevin Durant's, the momentum is certainly building for a trade between now and the June 25th draft. So I think you can reasonably expect that Kevin Durant's going to be moved. And I do think draft night is going to be very, very busy. We know Cooper Flagg is going number 1. We know Dylan Harper is going number 2. But we also know that there are teams trying to get number 2 away from San Antonio. And then after number 2, I do think it's going to be pretty active because there are a lot of teams with multiple first-round picks that want to move up. And then later in the draft, so many good players, so many prospective draftees have gone back to college to chase NIL riches that Jake Fisher, who writes twice a week on my Substack, put it beautifully yesterday. From 25 to 55, there is now all kinds of uncertainty that likely invites movement. And the other thing, in this world teams live in now with these luxury tax aprons, you've got to get a player at 25 or 34 or 41 or whatever it is. You need that guy to be a rotation player for you because you need players on rookie scale deals. They've never been more valuable. So that's the long-winded answer, long-winded way of saying yes. We're going to see lots of activity. Is it going to be the all-time frenzy that some are projecting? I'm too paranoid to promise you that.
You can't promise it. It's more just like we feel it coming. It seems like that is the case, and you hit on a lot right there. But the thing that reason I think it's going to be active is that we are sort of now a couple years into this new second apron CBA, right? Where teams are really having to make decisions and adjustments. And so I want to start just by asking you that. It seems like this new CBA is designed for more player movement, designed for teams having to constantly think about their short-term future, avoid aprons, avoid taxes. And that's why it seems like a lot of teams have to look around the corner and say, are we in contention or do we need to move on? And so is that a lot of the talk? When you talk to people around the league, are there people saying like, hey man, we're just trying to navigate this new CBA? And so that's why there's so much turmoil and so many rumors going on.
Well, let's not also forget we're about to crown a seventh champion in 7 seasons, which has never
Yes.
happened, a seventh different champion. And Adam Silver held his annual press conference before game one of the finals and was flat out asked, is this what you guys want? Is this parity the goal of this new CBA? And Adam Silver pretty much said the league office is very happy with this. And, there's all this chatter about the ratings and how bad the ratings are and how miserable the league must be that it's Indiana and Oklahoma City in the finals. If they are, they're not betraying that reaction or emotion. Like, this is the everybody has a chance era in the NBA. And teams all over the league see it and want to seize upon that. And, they've watched Indiana steadily build up to a team that is now 2 wins away from a championship. And I'm sure there are teams out there that think they can do it too.
Yeah.
Tyrese Halliburton was a mid-lottery pick and Pascal Siakam was lower down the first round board, and that's their two best players. If you get the right mix, it doesn't have to be the number 1, 2, or 3 pick. I think there was even a team whose
Right.
centerpiece was drafted at number 41. Can't remember who that recent champion was. So it's like, if you get this is a time of opportunity in the NBA.
I think the Pacers too. We'll see how the series goes. There's still a lot of finals left to be played, but whether it's Oklahoma City or Indiana, but I think more so true of Indiana, there should be a sense around the league of, hey, we can do this. Like nobody was picking Indiana to win the championship coming into the year, but they came together. There's a lot of talent in the league. When you get to guys 2 through 12 in a rotation, there's a lot of talent to be had. And if you're smart, you can build it. So it does feel like teams maybe are saying, hey, let's not just play the long game here. Let's see what we can do. And then you talked about the draft, which I find interesting because another thing about the draft, similar to when we talk about free agency and that you can build a contender, I think 10 years ago, there was always this consensus. That's the number one guy. And then 2 through 5, these are the guys. And then 5 through 9, these are the guys. And it feels like in recent years, teams have been a little bit more bold about, you know what, that guy was projected at 27, but we took him at 13. Or that guy was a second rounder, but we took him at 22. And it seems like that's just the new NBA, that teams are not afraid to kind of reach for it. This draft, not only do you have that component of it, but you have the fact that after 1 and 2, it's wide open. So it sounds like you're setting the stage for teams telling people, or at least signaling, hey, man, we might take somebody at number 7 that is way behind, or we might take somebody at 20 that is way behind. It seems like that's the kind of draft we're shaping up for.
Well, look, I need to stress and underline when we get to the real draft expertise, that is not my expertise. So it's like, I do not want to sit here and pretend like, especially, where I live. I live in Dallas with the Mavs winning the lottery. It's like, great. Cooper
you know who they're
Flag.
taking? You know who they're taking?
Cooper Flag is all I need to know.
Yeah.
I I'm not the best guy to project who's going at 7 or 12 or 16, but I just the rumbles that I do hear, it's just we've got your Oklahoma Cities, your Orlandos, your Brooklyns, your Atlantas, these teams that have multiple firsts, and they're thinking, can we package those and move up? Because look, the top of the draft is what everybody's talking about, but there are scouts do like the talent, at least 2 through 7, 8, 9. So
Oh no. Oh no. What happened? We might have lost Mark. There he is. He's back. We don't have your volume though. What happened to your volume? Okay, he has a reset here. Looks confident that he knows what it is. Let's find out here. I see people in the chat. Yes, my eye, as I talked about on the show yesterday, I got elbowed in pickup, so that's why I have the look I do. James, while we wait for him, just to can we give some proof here? Because some people are saying, look, here it is right here, me in my basketball jersey. I just gotten home. There's the cut. You can see I got cut there. That's the elbow to the orbital bone. And then I got stitched up by somebody on the team. You can see we're both in our basketball gear. Somebody on the team is a doctor. Got stitched up right at my house there. So a little proof for you guys. A little proof that this was actually a basketball incident and not some street fight. There you go. We got him back.
I'm really sorry. Is my volume back on?
You're all good, man. You're back. We got a little story time in because people were wondering, I'm sure as you were as well, about my my cut eye here that happened in a pickup game.
I actually can't even see that. You got to cut. Oh, I can see it now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you can see it if I really show it to you. Yeah, quite a bummer, man. After 40, basketball is just injuries and aches.
Just wait till you get to 50.
Looking forward to it.
Sorry about that, man. It's crazy. That's the second time. The same source has done that to me twice this week, ringing at an inopportune time. But no source is too big for me to hang up on Adamada, so I'm back.
There you go. So yes, you were saying you don't know about the draft. You're not trying to say who's going to go or that exactly all the different
yeah, I'm just not the guy to evaluate the prospect specifically, but there's been a lot of talk about teams wanting to package two and move up. It's going to be busy, man. It is going to be, and I'm actually I love that the second round is on a separate day. I don't see. I saw so much negativity about that last year. I don't understand how basketball nerds like us could be bothered by the draft doubling in time and spilling into a second day. But this time, round two is also at night. I didn't love it in the daytime, so I think it's going to be a pretty busy 2 days and a great jumping off point for the free agent frenzy that we all love. And look, there's no free agency anymore. Free agency means trade season. It's a second trade season because the significant moves are made via trade.
100%. And the first domino to fall, it feels like, is going to be Kevin Durant. He's the big fish, in this trade season. It seems all but certain that Phoenix is going to send him somewhere. And so what is the latest on that? And what is the timeline that you expect? Is this a thing where minute one, second one of free agency, it's like, okay, that's the first deal that gets done because everybody knows it's lined up?
I genuinely don't even think it makes it to free agency. I think we're going to see a Kevin Durant trade this month between now and the draft. Exactly when that is. Common sense and history would tell you that it's more likely to be closer to the draft. But that's one of the crazy parts about this job. The NBA finals are going on, and that's the pinnacle of competition, and that should be where the focus is. But I'll flat out admit it. And I have I'm writing for 28 other fan bases too that are starving and ready to move on, and they want to get to the off season. And Durant he is the headliner. He is at the front of the list, and it's going to be a really interesting situation because yes, to some degree, the Suns are working with Rich Kleiman, who's Kevin Durant's business partner. They are working with Team Durant to a degree, but are we going to see this thing? Are they going to outright trade Kevin Durant to a destination that he wants? Or are they going to make the best deal that surfaces for the Phoenix Suns? And instinct tells you they're probably more inclined to make the best deal they can for the Phoenix Suns. And what you're hearing with Durant, because he has 1 year left on his deal, back in February, it was assumed that if Durant got traded then, it would be just like Jimmy Butler's situation in Golden State. And wherever Durant landed, there would be a 2-year extension in excess of $100 million, basically to follow the trade almost immediately, like we saw with Butler and the Warriors. What you're hearing now on Durant, there are teams out there that are saying, you know what? We know he's only under contract for one more year at about 55 million. We're willing to gamble on him. And the Toronto Raptors are one of those teams. And the Toronto Raptors have already done this.
Wow.
They've already gambled on a Hall of Fame bound forward who had 1 year left on his deal, traded for Kawhi Leonard, won a
Worked out.
championship, and immediately lost Kawhi Leonard. So we know the Raptors have shown a willingness to do this. Will the Raptors or someone else be willing to make that same gamble on Kevin Durant now and give the Suns an offer better than the options they would have to trade him to the teams that are presumed to be Kevin Durant's preferred destinations, your San Antonios and your Houstons? So everyone in the league is monitoring this, watching this, looking at this, and Durant is domino number one at this point.
I mean, the reports, you see a lot of, there's 4 or 5 teams that he prefers. He likes those ones, but Toronto not on that list. And so it sounds like you think teams might look at that and say, hey, man, 1 year on a deal. Nobody's making plans 3 years out anymore. So 1 year on a deal, you get Kevin Durant. There might be 1, 2, 3 wild cards that enter their hat in the ring, and Phoenix has to look at it and say, hey, that's actually our best offer. So we don't care about the short list.
And on the flip side, those teams have to ask themselves, how much can we really give up for Kevin Durant if we're only going to have him for a year? How far are we willing to go? But, the notion that the Suns are going to get anywhere near the haul they gave up to get him, that does not appear to be the case. It just doesn't.
Well, the other big fish, and a lot of people in the chat are talking about this, the bigger fish, quite frankly, would be Giannis Antetokounmpo. But it's a little quiet on the trade front for him right now. What's going on there?
The Milwaukee Bucks have been consistent for ages. If Giannis doesn't force the issue, the Bucks don't want to be the ones to initiate this and look for trades. They don't. The Bucks want Giannis Antetokounmpo. They want him to stay. And to this point, Giannis Antetokounmpo has applied no pressure on them to move him. Does that mean it could happen later in the summer? There are some people around the league who believe yes, possibly. But is that is that more of the wishful thinking? Hold on, I do have to answer this one by text. So
This is how you get to see behind the curtain. Mark almost had to duck out today. He was gracious enough to hop on last minute, but this is the time of year. This is what it's like, man. The things coming in every second. And we actually have Tim Legler here. Why don't we bring him on to get the 3-man weave going? As we have Legs joining us as well from Indianapolis here. Legs, we have we're in between reports right now with Marc Stein. He is. You know how it goes. You get a message, and all of a sudden, it's like we have to address the message first.
That's how it works with these guys, man. Come on. That's why I don't know the color of Marc Stein's eyes, because he's always looking at his phone.
Ouch. Harsh but fair.
That's right.
Yeah, but Stein, you were saying, I mean, and it makes sense. Why would you trade Giannis until he asks for it? And Giannis seems like he would like to go to a contending situation, knows Milwaukee's not that, but also doesn't want to necessarily have to ask out. So it almost feels like a game of chicken in that regard.
That's the thing. I think he loves Milwaukee. He was just in Brazil and said it. He wants to get back to the finals with the Bucks. The problem is he's in year 12. Somehow Giannis Antetokounmpo is 30. Like, I mean, how did this happen? How has he been there for 12 years already? He sees what's happening around the league. He sees the Bucks and their standing and where they are. So surely, I'm sure deep down there's a sense of, can we get back to the mountaintop? How long is it going to take? I and others have been writing for weeks now. The Bucks behind the scenes are trying to sell him on the idea of a gap year. Give us a year to reset. And in 2026, 27, we'll be ready to contend again when we get the books in order, when we get the roster in order. But can they do it that quick? Can they make that promise? I mean, it's not that easy. And so I think Giannis, I mean, again, I do not know Giannis well. I do not want to speak for Giannis Antetokounmpo. I can't do that. My impression, my read, that and I think the way a lot of people around the league see it, his preference would obviously be to stay there and make it work there and win a second championship there. At some point, will he ask out? I mean, that is the whole league is asking that question, and there are many lustful teams out there who are praying that he does and have been for years. I mean, there's so many teams, their strategies behind closed doors is, can we get Giannis? Can we get Giannis? Here's our plan if Giannis asks for a trade. And, to this point, the Bucks haven't played a game since April 29th. It's been a while, and nothing has happened in Milwaukee, and that's why a lot of the conversation has moved on to Durant.
Yeah. Let me ask you about a team close to me, which is the Denver Nuggets, who it feels like this is a summer where they need to make some moves. And yet here we are on Friday, June 13th, and they do not have a general manager. The search seems to be taking quite a while. One, what are you hearing on the latest there? And two, how can a team be this close? You're saying there's going to be fireworks early. The Durant trade might not get to free agency. How can a team that has to make so many moves get this deep into, this close to free agency without a general manager?
Well, Ben Tenzer is operating as the interim general manager. And, I was actually going to say, in Denver, you guys have been pretty lucky. Josh Kroenke has done 2 or 3 media availabilities here in pretty short order. Yes. I've listened to those. I feel like Josh has been pretty transparent and pretty talkative about what's going on with the Nuggets. And I think it's clear that he has a lot of trust in Ben Tenzer. Jake Fisher and I wrote this, I want to say May 9th, May 10th, somewhere in there. And I don't know that it's changed that much here a month later. There is a belief around the league. The Nuggets are known to be weighing, do we just leave Ben Tenzer in place, make him the new GM, and he, with a long-term, close working relationship with Josh Kroenke as the operating owner of the team, do basically the two of them run it from here? Are the Nuggets quietly searching for someone else? There isn't a lot of hard evidence in circulation to suggest that. So I think because we're inching towards June 15th here, and the finals, the way it is now, as soon as the finals are over, you can start talking to your own free agents. The draft is in a matter of days. I think it's reasonable to assume that, Ben Tenzer and Josh Kroenke are running this thing together right now, and that's very well the way it might end up. I thought Matas and Legler were going to be hired as a package deal. What happened to that scenario?
I haven't got the call.
Adam couldn't get that done. You couldn't close the deal, Adam? What's up?
I couldn't close the deal, man. I think I dropped the ball. I do have a question for you on this, Legs. As a player, the Nuggets take the Thunder to 7. They have championship aspirations. Jokic in the height of his prime. As a player, how much are you paying attention to what the organization is doing when there's a vacancy at front office? Like, do players look at that? And if you hire a first-time general manager at this moment in time, do players think about that? And does it affect them? Or is that players are just so locked into their own world, they're not even paying attention behind the scenes?
Well, I can, it's hard to know what the modern player is thinking about. I can just tell you when I played, it was a big deal. You paid attention to all that kind of stuff. Going into the summer, if there was a vacancy and something had to be filled, yes, I was on top of it every single day trying to find out, because it could dramatically affect your team, yourself, your situation, your position. So yeah, guys are always concerned about that. And you get this close to these big decisions being made about your team, whether it's the draft or free agency or trades, whatever it may be. And you feel like they're in flux in the key position and the guy that's going to make those decisions. Yeah, I think it's a little bit unsettling for the guys on that team to know that they're getting closer and closer to the time when stuff's going to start happening fast and furious here pretty soon after the finals end. And you don't necessarily have the person in place that's going to be impacting those decisions.
Stein, this is the last one I have for you because I know you have to go, and I wanted to get to the Knicks head coaching vacancy, which is obviously a big deal in the NBA. They asked to speak to a couple of coaches, including Jason Kidd. That request was denied, or the initial request denied. What's the latest on both Jason Kidd's status as a potential candidate, as well as what the Knicks are looking to do and how quickly they're looking to act?
Well, the Knicks are moving slow, that's for sure. I mean, they have the only vacancy in the league, and also everybody knows they have more financial wherewithal than anybody who would be hiring a coach. They're now about to pay Tom Thibodeau $30 million not to coach. So
Oof.
There will always be people interested in taking that job, but the reality is, they requested permission to talk to 5 sitting coaches and got 5 swift rejections, which, like you said at the top, I'm sure it's happened, but I can't remember it like that. I mean, it was just incredible that they fired Tom Thibodeau on June 3rd. The first 2 names I heard were Jason Kidd and Ime Udoka in Houston. And then we've since heard Finch, and we know they made plays for Billy Donovan in Chicago and Quinn Snyder in Atlanta. I cannot remember a coaching search where they only went after coaches who were unavailable at first. There are a lot of good available coaches in this league. Without even mentioning Tim Legler, I can give you 5, right? Mike Malone, Budenholzer, Jenkins, Mike Brown. Frank Vogel is a consultant with the Mavs, but is essentially a coaching free agent. And of those 5 guys, 3 have won championships. There's been very little talk about those 5. All the focus has been on the names that the Knicks went after and were told no to. I do think there are some ties between Mike Brown and the Knicks. He did interview there in 2020 when Thibodeau got that job. He does have a relationship with Worldwide West, William Wesley, who of course has a huge voice in the Knicks front office. So this thing is still very slow moving, but it is off to a pretty unique start, I guess is the polite way I would say it. What was I want to hear Legs' reaction to. I mean, Legs is like, we're basically the same age. We've been watching this stuff for a long time. Don't remember many teams going for 5 coaches who weren't available.
No, this is funny because anytime something like this happens, I always think to myself, oh man, now they're going to hire maybe the 6th or 7th guy they talked to or wanted to talk to, and then have a press conference and tell everybody this is exactly the guy we wanted all along. That's the best. That's the best part of it all. When this kind of stuff happens and it gets out, I mean, it even happened a little bit to a certain extent with the Lakers because of the Danny Hurley situation and the open courtship of Danny Hurley. But in that case, you were getting a guy in JJ Redick who, like, he was just wanted the job so badly, to be able to coach without coaching experience, that he was able to brush that aside, no big deal, and everybody kind of bought that. But now, you're going to get deep into this search list before you actually get your guy. That press conference is going to be kind of interesting to watch because, the media in New York is not going to back off from it when they start talking about some of the other guys that came up, and there you are standing with like your 6th candidate and ends up getting the Knicks job. So it's pretty fascinating. I want to know, Mark, do you have any idea how much dead money is out there right now in coaching? Like how much money in this calendar year coming up is going to be paid total league wide to guys that aren't coaching? Has anybody ever done the math on that?
Just Phoenix is ridiculous.
Yeah,
I mean,
Phoenix
remember,
alone. What's Phoenix alone?
Vogel,
what's their number? Yeah,
both Vogel and Budenholzer were fired 1 year into 5-year deals. So that's
about $80 million probably right there.
Matt Ishbia is paying. If Mike Budenholzer and Frank Vogel do not get a head coaching job for next season, Matt Ishbia is paying $16 million next season alone to 2 coaches who aren't coaching his team, and then whatever he's paying Jordan Knott, his new head coach. But you know what? Part of the reason this happens, I think teams gamble. They give these big deals, and they figure someone's going to hire Mike Malone, so we'll eventually be off. That's a good point. We'll be off the hook.
Look at Monty Williams. How much is Monty Williams? Right?
Oh man, that's a great one too.
I don't think he's planning on coaching. Look how much money they gave him, and he did 1 year.
You know what else though? These owners, they got the money. I'm not going to shed too many tears for them. They got the cash. That's why Madas and I we just want to chart deflections for you when you get your head coaching job, because coach, we know you're going to get your 5-year deal. We just want to be part of it.
Stein, this is my long play, man. This was the whole point of the show. Everything else, I'm just trying to get on Legs' good graces here.
It looks like Adam already pitched this idea of me coaching to someone because someone obviously punched him in the face.
Get out of here. Legs? No, not Legs.
It's inevitable, man. No. It's inevitable. you're going to get these guys watch you on TV and somebody's coming after you.
There you go. He is Marc Stein. You can check him out at his fantastic Substack where he's always breaking news. Make sure to check him out on the DLLS Mavs show as well for all things Mavs. Stein, thank you so much for making this work today.
And I apologize. One of these days we're going to do it. And I promise I will not look at my phone during the show. Not in June, but someday we're going to do it.
Yeah, I was going to say probably like August, late August or something like that.
No, it makes it even better because these guys look even busier. For all I know, he could be on there buying wine or something. I don't know what he's doing. Looking at
I'm ordering on Amazon.
Take care, Mark.
Be good, guys. See you guys later.
See you, man.
All right, let's take our first break. On the other side, Legs and I are going to preview tonight's Game 4, pivotal Game 4. The whole series might come down to this one. So let's hit the latest from Indianapolis from Legs, as well as what we're looking for tonight on the other side. Vivid Seats, the NBA playoffs are heating up, and there's no better time to experience the intensity in person. Whether you're trying to catch your favorite team live or just looking for the best deals on live event tickets like concerts or festivals here in the summer, let's tell you about our friends at Vivid Seats. Vivid Seats is the best place to get your tickets to any game or show. They have the best selection of seats and 100% buyer guarantee, and they're the only ticket marketplace that rewards you for every purchase. For a limited time, our listeners can use promo code ALLNBA30 to receive $30 off of their first Vivid Seats purchase of $300 or more. Just click on the link in the show notes or download the Vivid Seats app and use promo code ALLNBA30 for $30 off of your first purchase of $300 or more. And that's not all for the remainder of the NBA playoffs, which is probably about a week. Vivid Seats is giving away free tickets. Check out the exclusive Game Center in the Vivid Seats app and play NBA playoff picks for your chance to win. When it comes to playoff hoops, being there is all that matters, so experience it live with Vivid Seats. Also want to tell you guys about Monarch Money. Finances can be messy and confusing. A lot of people are bad at managing their own finances. Monarch Money acts like your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control so you can stop earning and start growing. It's more than your average budgeting app, although it is that as well. Helps you create a budget, which is sort of the foundation of helping grow your money. Monarch Money is a complete financial command center for all of your accounts, your investments, and your goals. If you've been managing accounts for quite a while, especially as you get older, you start to add different investments to your portfolio, and it can get messy to try to manage everything. Well, Monarch Money helps you do that in a consolidated place so you can track everything that's going on as you try to build your wealth. Don't just manage your money. Start building wealth with 50% off of your first year exclusively for our listeners. Get control of your overall finances with Monarch Money. Use that code ALLNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off of your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code ALLNBA. All right, back here with Tim Legler, live from Indianapolis, an undisclosed location in Indianapolis. How is it going out there, Legs? You enjoying your stay?
I'm enjoying my stay. Yeah, man, it's been great. It's I've had over the 24 years I've been here, man. It's been all over the place. Like, I mean, early on, I was doing just studio. Then I was doing Countdown, the pregame show. I did that for 4 or 5 years. So we'd always be on site for the finals. Then I was doing Sports Center coverage from the finals. Then I was doing finals coverage with Van Pelt in DC. So I wasn't on the road. Now I'm back on the road. It's great because the one thing is you get to see everybody in the basketball world in face to face. And you communicate with these people a lot and stuff like that, but getting to see them face to face and having good conversations with them is always great to catch up, and you just feel more connected to those people. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, man. I'm noticing something though, and it's been interesting, man. Like all of a sudden there's like this feeling in the air, and maybe because I'm in Indianapolis, that, Thunder got no shot. Thunder got no shot here.
Man, we went quick the other direction. Okay.
And it blows my mind. Look, I picked the Thunder to win it in a long series. I'm not changing my mind on that. Yeah. I know that a lot of people think, oh, well, okay, Indiana, they cracked the code, man. Wednesday night, they cracked the code. Right. They're good to go now. Like as if Oklahoma City doesn't have the ability to now counterpunch and make an adjustment to some things. And I think there are a few adjustments they can make. But it's just funny how quickly, and maybe it's just because people emotionally, you start rooting for the underdog or whatever it may be. I think both of these teams are really likable players. It's not like there's even a villain in this whole series to root against. They're all good guys. The coaches are good guys. So it's like the emotional attachment, maybe because we're in Indianapolis, I'm feeling it heavier, but it just kind of feels like, even though people like, I mean, in my industry that do this for like, just talking to them who should be just impartial for the most part, just feeling this sense, like the way people are talking about this now, it's like they've flipped now. Like, oh man, okay, well, I guess Indiana's got this solved, and they're just going to put up, 120, 115 to 120 the rest of the series, as if Oklahoma City is not like a 68 win team that was historically good defensively this year and won't have anything to say about that. They're going to have something to say about that tonight. I'm really curious to see what it is. I'm curious to see, particularly from a lineup standpoint, what Mark Daigneault has in store, but also what is he going to do to combat the way they defended Shai Gilgeous-Alexander?
Yep.
How are you going to make his life a little bit easier? Because, man, did he have to work. That looked like hard labor the last game. And the first two in Oklahoma City, he wasn't really bothered at all at any point. He felt no pressure. He did whatever he wanted. That was a big adjustment on their part. They prioritized him at the level he should get prioritized. But now there has to be a counter to that if you're OKC, in addition to the lineup changes with the two bigs. And I think you got to look a little bit at Case and Wallace's minutes as opposed to Wiggins. Wiggins gives you a little bit more pop. I think if they're gonna blitz SGA to this extent, there's shots to be had. Wiggins is a higher level threat than Case and Wallace. Do you need all that additional ball pressure with so many good defenders already on the floor? He's played 80 plus minutes in the series. He has 17 points. Wiggins had 18 in one game. When the only game he really got to play, he played a little bit last game. So there's some things I'm looking for OKC to adjust to. But I'm just telling you, man, it's in the air. I can feel it in the air. Just the way you're talking to people, it's almost as if like they think now, no, Indiana's going to win this thing, and it's interesting. Let's see what happens tonight, man. I think this will be obviously the game that tells, I think, everybody how this is going to go.
I mean, does it feel like who wins this one is going to win the series? Because I can see a world where, Indiana drops this one and still comes back. I think if Indiana wins and goes up 3-1, they're going to be in the driver's seat. It's just really hard to come back from 3-1 in any series. But at the same time, I just think that basketball, it's always been this way. This is what you're talking about. The NBA is so much about adjustments, especially in the first 4 games of a series. And so, yes, a team can dominate one game, but it doesn't really tell you the next game, because the next game is going to take on a different personality as the team makes drastic adjustments to change the texture of a game. So do you feel like this is whoever wins tonight wins, or do you think, hey, no, that's not necessarily the signal?
Not necessarily, honestly. I think if OKC wins, that's going to put them back in full control. Do you think that OKC, a 68 win team with this level of defensive ability would not be capable of winning 3 straight if 2 of those were at home? You're talking about at that point just having to win that one road game, and then the other 2 would be at home. My point being, I'm not sure that 3-1 for Indiana necessarily means that's, final nail in the coffin. This thing is over. You would expect OKC to go home and win game 5. So now, you got all that pressure on Indiana in a game 6 at home, so I wouldn't rule out OKC coming back. If they win though, I think, it feels like they're going to reestablish control of the series if they win tonight. Most importantly, stylistically, how different does it look than game 3? And that's the thing for OKC. They've got to get a control of Indiana's offense again, because they lost control of it in game 3. And that's what I'm dying to see. What are they going to do about that? They allowed them to create that type of tempo that they absolutely have to have to win this series. And now I'm looking at Marc Daigneault and that coaching staff and the personnel in this team and the challenge that's before them. I'm just expecting something different tonight out of them defensively. I think we're going to be talking about throughout the game and probably tomorrow.
Well, you mentioned what I think is the most interesting thing about this game when you talk about adjustments, and that is that Indiana did a great job of pressuring Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander individually, I thought, did a bad job of being aggressive and breaking that. But collectively as a team, I thought Oklahoma City looked almost unprepared for it, or, they didn't know how they wanted to approach it. But we have this great graphic here at Legs. I don't know if you saw this on our Twitter handle. This was a great graphic made by All NBA Stats and Research, AOP. On the bottom, you have front court touches, the less space on front court touches, and on the up access, you have higher pickup distance. And you see that Indiana in game 3 guarded Shai so much of an outlier from every other game he's been guarded this entire season, meaning they're not giving him space in the front court and they are picking him up higher and further out on the court. Anytime you see a chart like this where there's one game that's such an outlier, you say, hey, that was unique. That was such an extreme way for Indiana to guard him, picking him up higher than ever, giving him less space than ever. So to me, how do they combat this? And is this more about Shai or more about Oklahoma City and how they adjust to it?
Well, that told me, the way they played him the other night, it told me this, because everybody was talking about Indiana's offense coming out of the 2 games in Oklahoma City. Wow, what's going on with Indiana's offense? How do they create the pace? What's wrong with Halliburton? We weren't really talking about anything else. And what that tells me, that chart, is that Rick Carlisle was saying, you know what? It doesn't matter about the offensive stuff. If we don't get this guy under control, we have no chance of beating them. If he's dictating every possession because we cannot contain the ball at the point of attack, and he's just unaccounted for, he's escaping everything, and he's in the paint all day long, either to get into the shots he loves or to just collapse our defense so other guys benefit. Doesn't matter what we do offensively. We're not winning the series because he's controlling the action. So Rick Carlisle made defending Shai the priority, not like get our offense going.
Which I thought was a little crazy, to be honest, because he said this going into the finals, and I remember thinking, like, I don't know if you can do that. That seems like a fool's errand. But he was right. They could do it, and he knew the levers to pull to do it, at least for a couple games.
Yeah, and I think, so you ask about, like, what does Oklahoma City need to do around that? Tell me if these 2 things add up to you, because they didn't add up to me the other night. How do you exert that much energy and attention on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? The most he's been blitzed in a playoff game in his career. Okay. By blitzing, you're talking about trapping 2 defenders on the ball, and you're talking about typically 30 to 40 feet from the basket. That's when these were happening. How do you pull that off and also only give up 22 3-point attempts? I'll tell you how.
Right.
Because the spacing was terrible, and they had guys out there at times that were catching the ball that aren't as big a threat. So that, to me, is what they've got to look at. You don't think Indiana's going to try to replicate the exact same thing? Of course they are. They're not going to go, oh, you know what? They're going to be ready for it now. Let's go back and play them straight up again as much as we can. They're not doing that. They're going to do the same thing. That's pretty much guaranteed. So the question is, why is the ball not traveling out of traps that far out on the floor that are putting you in super advantageous positions to attack them? That is what we're going to see tonight. That's why Mark Daigneault gets paid the big bucks, and he's got to figure that out. And look, in some ways, the 2 bigs on the court together, when Shai's being attacked like that, could be a problem for Indiana. Because look, let's say one of the bigs sets it and then slips to the middle, 2 defenders on Shai, that ball comes to Hartenstein or Chet in the middle. Those guys are both pretty decent playmakers out of that spot. The other bigs on the baseline, 2 shooters on the wings. That's going to be tough for Indiana to deal with if you're going to put 2 guys on Shai and force him to give it up. So that they didn't get any of that stuff. Like, you have to make teams pay if they're going to do that to your best player. Oklahoma City did not make them pay the other night. And I guess that's probably, game plan change number 1. They've got to pay a price if they're going to do that to our best player. And let's see what that looks like. 3-point attempts, it's one of the lowest of literally the modern era of NBA basketball. 22 3-point attempts. Denver had a game, I think, in the finals when they were there with less. I asked the researcher to look it up. They had 19, I think, in a game. But they're a super low volume 3-point shooting team anyway. Oklahoma City, on an average night, they're like 30 in that 34 range, 35 range. That's an incredible reduction in 3-point attempts. So you got to get more firepower, and you've got to, because what happens is you make a few more threes in the first half. They're playing them that way. It's going to then change the aggressiveness of which they are trapping him. How long are they staying with him if they're getting beat on the backside with 3-point shooting, or they're getting beat with that lob to two bigs because there's just not enough coverage back there because your big is out on the floor. Miles Turner is 35 feet from the basket. So they didn't make him pay. That's what it all comes down to. That's going to be the biggest adjustment for OKC.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me real quick, because I want to talk what you just said. The big to big passing implies you'll be playing two bigs, which is they have not been doing. So I want to get to that here in a second. But first, game 3 for Shea almost reminds me in some ways of game 2 for Halliburton. And what I mean is, as they were pressuring Shea, there were a lot of possessions when I went back and rewatched this game where he was content to get the ball out of his hands. They're pressuring me full court, run to the corner and kind of stand there and take himself out of the play. And then maybe later on, I'm going to come around and get the ball. But Case and Wallace, different guys would look to attack, and then they would get turnovers or bad shots. And part of me wonders if Shea has to look at that and say, you're trying to say, if they're going to overload on me, then I'm going to drag defense away. In the regular season, yes. In the playoffs, it might be, like we said with Halliburton, there's no good options. The finals, everybody's locked in. They're playing great defense. So you have to find a way to be aggressive and in control and get B- looks. Not every time, but sometimes you're going to have to say, I can't just be a floor spacer. I'm Shea. I'm not just going to be off ball and stand on the corner. I have to find a way to put pressure on them, even through this trapping defense that they have. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, because it's just it's too much tied to their identity as a team and built around the greatness of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander offensively. As much as we talk about their balance and their depth, all those things are great. Doesn't matter if you don't have a guy that good offensively, right? As your top guy. So it's built around him, his ability to break down anything in front of him. It was surprising to me, honestly, when I saw the data after the game that was, I'm like, how is every other team that he's played against not just completely sold out to the idea that we have to contain him at all costs and see if these other guys are going to be good enough to beat us? So somehow Indiana pulled it off to a better extent than anybody else that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has ever played in a playoff game.
Yep.
That's kind of amazing
in
to
that
me.
game. Yep.
Yeah. And that's what you just watched on Wednesday. And so, I guess, it's bad luck a little bit for OKC that this is the one time in the series there's only one day off. They could probably use an extra day to come up with as much as you possibly can to counter this. But it's one day. And I know that the two teams were over there at the arena yesterday because I was over there while that was going on. And it basically was, kind of confirmed that they didn't really do much. It's all about preservation of legs, particularly as tired as OKC looked the other night. And Shai, the guy looked completely gassed. He sounded gassed, which was a little bit concerning to me how mentally exhausted he sounded in answering questions yesterday. I was kind of like, wow, man, not as much resolve coming out of him. It sounds more like exhaustion. That wasn't a great sign. So one day off, probably not the best timing for them when they're the ones now that clearly have to solve this because this is what they're going to do going forward. As far as the two bigs, you mentioned the two bigs.
Hold on. I was going to frame it this way. Legs. One way to counter is to create a different problem. And that's what, to me, the two bigs would, because it's not like the two bigs solves this problem, but it maybe makes it harder on Indiana to do that because it's like, hey, the equation has changed now. And so that's one thing. And do you expect to see it? I mean, you've been calling for it all series. Do you expect tonight is the night we see more minutes for the two bigs on OKC?
I do. I mean, and I don't, Mark Daigneault does not come off to me. And I've met a lot of coaches in my life that I wouldn't say this about. He doesn't come off to me as a guy that, like, hell or high water, I'm married to my idea and I'm going to prove I'm right, damn it. He doesn't seem like a guy like that. I know coaches like that. But the ego, it will prevent them until they're absolutely forced into a situation where they've got to adjust to what other people are talking about. He doesn't seem like that to me, man. He just wants to win this series. And he's got to look at it. It's a terribly small sample size, but it's pretty good. The results have been pretty good in the handful of minutes they've played together. And it was so good most of the year. So your guess is as good as mine. I do not know what we are about to see tonight. Is he going to go more with the two bigs? I don't think he's going to start them. Maybe we would have already heard about that if he was going to go back to the starting lineup with the two bigs. But he didn't start those guys every night in the regular season. Let's be clear about that. He did mix it up occasionally. And in interviews I had with him, he liked talking about the fact that, like, yeah, kind of like to mix it up sometimes, and you never know what we're going to go with. But the majority of the time they were together. And when they were when Chet came back from his injury, and when they were together, the results were pretty damn good. And so let's see if in any way what he sees on film lends itself to, you know what, if they're going to play this aggressively this far out on the floor with their bigs, and mainly I'm talking about Turner, Siakam, like primarily, then there's opportunities if we can get the ball out of that to attack them with size and get quality shots to the rim or get them on the glass. And I'm curious to see if they utilize it.
Game 4, it feels like this is shaping up. I mean, there's been 2 really good games in the series so far. One that wasn't quite as good, but 2 really close games. It feels like this one's going to be maybe the best of them all, just because both teams know what's at stake, and there's so many big things here. Is there any final thoughts you have on this up to preview tonight? Any other things you want to kind of touch on?
The only other thing is what I talked about earlier. I don't understand, a guy like Wiggins, who, by the way, it's not like he just was found money with him the other night. The guy averaged over a 2-month stretch this year when they had some injuries, 18 points a game. That's a big number for a reserve in this league. 18 a game for 2 months and shooting really efficiently. Doesn't play really in game 1. Game 2, all right, I'm going to play you. All right, here's 18 in 20 minutes. He and Caruso basically were the storyline of that game. And then you come into game 3 and it's like he got 10 minutes, but he only took 2 shots. It was no rhythm to it whatsoever. I just don't – sometimes I think we overthink things maybe as coaches. If I had a guy play that well for me in game 2, I'm thinking about him between game 2 and game 3. He's still fresh in my mind how well that guy played, how comfortable he looked on this stage. And I'm thinking about getting that guy in the game and seeing if he's on one of those heaters that lasts a couple of games. Kind of like Indiana probably feels right now about Benedict Mathurin.
Right.
Hey, man, let's ride this. And with it's not like Mathurin's going to come in and miss a couple shots. He's going to play 8 minutes.
Right.
And that's what
You're
I kind of felt like with
Wiggins.
Wiggins. Yeah, let him go a little bit because, like I said, Casey Wallace is a good player. He's their best on-ball defender, pressure defender. If you're especially if it's in one of those games and it's pretty obvious that, okay, man, this might be a higher scoring game with 64-60 at halftime. You're already kind of in that mindset. It seems like this might be a higher scoring game tonight. We might need more offense. And so Wiggins is a guy tonight to maybe look for as an X factor guy that gets more run than he got in game 3 and maybe has an impact because he is a fairly effortless scorer when he gets an opportunity.
Well, it should be good. Cue that outro music there, James. It should be a good one. I'm excited for it. You're on SportsCenter again, I assume, today, right after the game?
Yeah, I'll be here. I'll be doing SportsCenter before the game, previewing it, and then, of course, I'll be right there on the court after the game with SVP.
So our show is off for the weekend. We will be back Monday talking about this game, but you can catch Legler. These have been fantastic, by the way, Legs. The instant touchscreen after the game, live from the court, man, has really been something to watch. So everybody, as soon as the game's over, click on over to SportsCenter and check it out so you can get your legs fixed before a long weekend. Legs, have fun out there. Enjoy it. And, we'll circle back on Monday.
All right, man. Sounds good.
All silly like the mayor.